Okay. Welcome back to the Whiteout Report podcast, the final post-game edition of the regular season. Depending if Penn State accepts their bowl berth, might be the final post-game edition of the season as a whole. As you can see on your screen, Greg is here with us as well. We're going to start this one a little bit differently. But before we start, thank you for being here with us. Make sure you like, you subscribe, give us your comments, your super chats, your super likes, all that good stuff. And as I've been saying, make sure you have your notifications on because at some point, probably now in the next 24 to 48 hours, Penn State's going to have a coach. And that's what we're going to start with tonight is the latest coaching buzz because the last 24 hours or so with the smoke and with the rumors has been pretty crazy. But yeah, I'm Marty.
And that's why I'm here, by the way. I'm only here for a couple of minutes. I'm here for the craziness that I just heard before. I wasn't supposed to be on, but I just heard some really crazy Penn State head coach talk. So Lincoln Riley, when did he get into this? I don't think you guys ever talked about Lincoln Riley at all.
We didn't. It's literally been probably the last 24 hours, maybe not even that long. Really since like late last night, there was a lot of Lincoln Riley smoke. And I know, Dylan, you said you had heard from some people earlier in the week that it could potentially be Lincoln Riley. If you look at the betting odds right now, the top two betting odds favorites are Kalen DeBoer and Lincoln Riley.
Wow.
I put into that what you will. I think there's been enough Lincoln Riley smoke and tie back to what we discussed yesterday about the quote unquote mystery candidates that I think the mystery candidate was probably Lincoln Riley. And I'm not saying Lincoln Riley is or isn't a legitimate candidate. I think there might be a scenario where he's being used as a smokescreen to take the heat off of who the actual candidate is. But yeah,
being who? DeBoer?
That could be my guess. Where, and again, I mentioned this yesterday, where early in the week there was all this smoke about DeBoer, and then it just stopped, and then all of a sudden there's the mystery candidate. And it made me wonder, is this a take heat attention off of DeBoer potentially?
From DeBoer's camp?
Yeah, from the DeBoer camp, because obviously Alabama's got a pretty important game that's going to kick off here in about 3 or 4 minutes. So I don't know what's going to happen. We've also heard some rumors that Bob Chesney has said to UCLA, like, yeah, I'm going to take the UCLA job. And Chesney...
UCLA Twitter last night was pretty excited about
They're pretty
something.
confident. Yeah, and that's
why not? Yeah.
today. And there was never a scenario where Bob Chesney was going to say yes to UCLA before Penn State told him no. So, and they weren't going to tell him no unless they thought they were getting one of the big guys, right? Because Chesney was always their fallback.
And that makes a lot of sense because, and you guys have talked about it, him being a group of 5 head coach. It's a lot different.
And if I can interject,
go ahead.
I don't think this would be the craziest turn of events as well. But this could also be Jimmy Sexton's Mona Lisa of coaching cycles. And now what would have to happen? We know most likely Lane Kiffin is headed to LSU, right? But there's also been reports there's also been reports that maybe the USC job is an interest to Kalen DeBoer. So what if, and this is unlikely to happen, I don't need anybody to take, this and run to Twitter, but what if what if Lincoln Riley goes to Penn State, DeBoer goes to USC, and don't you think that Lane Kiffin would rather go to Alabama than LSU or well, it's LSU or Ole Miss.
Oh,
but I think Lane Kiffin would be pretty happy at Alabama if that job opened up. So I think there's a 3% chance that happens, but Lane Kiffin's decision feels like, I feel like I almost feel like we should have known by now what his decision was going to be. But here we are. 24 hours after, more than 24 hours after that Egg Bowl, and it's still radio silence on what he's going to do. He reportedly met with the Ole Miss AD today, but the longer this goes on, we'll see what happens with the Alabama game tonight. But if Alabama loses to Auburn, things could really start getting interesting really quickly.
Do you think that the players or everybody at Alabama, do you feel that they know that DeBoer is probably not going to be there after this game?
I don't even know if I would say he's probably not going to be there. This whole Penn State saga has been such a,
saga is the right word for it. That's for certain.
It's been leverage, and it's all been about leverage. I mean, what's real, what's not real, what's a smokescreen, what's not a smokescreen. Well, I think what we can confidently say right now is that there has been legitimate smoke. Reported by Penn State beat writers as well that Lincoln Riley, at least, that the name has popped up in connected Penn State circles, and I can attest to that. I got a text on Saturday. I got a text on Thursday from somebody about it was just a hey, and somebody who's connected has been right in conversations in the past on Penn State hires and AD decisions, saying that, hey, I've heard Lincoln Riley's name pop up. So
does he have any ties to Penn State at all?
No, but there seems to be an not overwhelming, but there seems to be a murmur going around that he is considering his options when it comes to USC. I think me and Marty talked about this in a group text earlier, but USC is a hard place to win with the current administration, how the administration kind of, meddles and things at USC, if I'm correct on that, Marty.
Yes, it definitely is. And I will say I can attest to Dylan's getting the message about Lincoln Riley, because when I woke up this morning in said group text, I had a message from Dylan of a GIF of Abraham Lincoln. And that's when I started to piece together what was going on here. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's an outlandish scenario at all. To circle back to Lane, the reason we haven't heard anything is even if it's not Kiffin on the move, these guys are all represented by Jimmy Sexton. They're all going to know what's going on. And if Lane would rather have the Alabama job, and if there's any chance whatsoever DeBoer's moving on, Lane's going to hold out. And, I mentioned this to another friend of mine that I was texting back and forth with this about tonight. And I told him, and he said, that's a valid point about Alabama and would they want Lane. I said, well, here's the thing. Lane's going to have Nick Saban's stamp of approval.
Oh, absolutely.
In Tuscaloosa, there's nothing you can have that's bigger than Saban's stamp of approval. And I also think, it would be easier for Lane to work within those parameters of Saban still being involved than it would be for DeBoer, for example, just because Lane was his offensive coordinator. And even on College Game Day this morning, whenever Thamel was talking about it, he said, hey, one of the things Lane Kiffin said was he's going to call Nick Saban at some point today to consult him about all of this. So, obviously there's still a good relationship there between those two, which is very important in Tuscaloosa.
What was did Nick Saban so he came out and he said something recently, against Ole Miss in the Kiffin situation? I know there was something I saw that he made some sort of statement.
I thought he said something along the lines of, if you're Ole Miss, you need to at least, you have to let Kiffin finish the season with this group, which I agree wholeheartedly with. I think if you're Ole Miss, if you don't let's say Alabama loses tonight and you go to the SEC championship game next weekend and then in the playoff, if you don't let Kiffin coach those games, you're doing the entire team a disservice, right? Even if he's going to be out, you've got to let him try and finish this out with his crew.
Let the record show, the first indications I got about Lincoln being a possibility was Thursday morning at about 11:30 in the morning. So, I think it's gotten more smoke the last 18 hours or so, maybe late last night into this morning. But so it has been something that has been brewing on the Lincoln stuff since about Thursday morning. But again, sorry, that was just a side note.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense if you look at it. So right now, the possibility could be DeBoer to USC, Riley to Penn State, Kiffin to Alabama.
Now, the DeBoer and USC stuff, I will say, there's and usually I wouldn't, and I would still take a grain of salt, but there was a Barstool guy who has been correct on a handful of coaching hires already.
Well, he's based out of LA, isn't he? So he would have some ties out there to USC and UCLA.
And I'm blanking on his name here, but he's been right on a handful of hires recently, but it's Liam Blutman, but he said that this morning that DeBoer is intrigued by USC. He apparently mentioned it on their podcast earlier this week as well. So
nobody even say that though. If there's nothing. I mean, Lincoln Riley. There's been no word recently about Lincoln Riley leaving USC. Right?
No, yeah. Well, the Riley stuff is definitely more underneath the radar.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Real quick, I don't know if you saw it, Dylan, but there was a report this afternoon. I saw it during the Penn State game that apparently Lincoln Riley's people also reached out to Florida.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable to think Lincoln Riley's looking around, but I think if you're a Penn State fan at this point, it's okay to be cautiously optimistic that, hey, there's a scenario where this ends with either Kalen DeBoer or Lincoln Riley.
And who would you prefer?
I think I'd still slightly lean DeBoer, but to me, either one of those are a home run hire.
So you wouldn't have any preference, really?
If I had to choose one of the two, I think I'd go DeBoer, but I would be over the moon with either one. I think those are two of the best coaches in the country.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I was reading
Who would you rather, if you had the choice, would you rather have DeBoer or Lincoln Riley?
That's a good question. Probably lean towards DeBoer, just because the track record recently is a little bit stronger. Now, you could say, hey, he lost, 3 games at Alabama so far this season?
Well, 3 if he loses today.
3 tonight. Maybe I'm seeing the future. I don't know.
Magic happens.
But you can say his first 2 seasons at Alabama haven't been smooth, and they haven't been. I mean, they did lose to a really bad Florida State team to start this season. But, yeah, I think DeBoer just would be my pick just because Lincoln's done a good job at USC, but I still have questions about him and his philosophies if they'll work in the Big Ten.
I just think with the two, the way I would look at it is, to me, DeBoer is a top 5 head coach in college football, in my opinion. Lincoln Riley, I'm not going to say that, but I still think he's a top 5 offensive mind in college football. And if you're Penn State, you can go back to the turn of the century at this point. It's been quarterback development and lack of offensive identity for 25 years now with this program. And with Lincoln Riley,
you're not going to have either. That changes.
Yeah. You don't. I was texting a buddy of mine earlier, and I said to him, not just Drew Aller, Christian Hackenberg. I'll go all the way back to Anthony Morelli. They've had talent. They've had 5-star talent at quarterback that they never fully developed. And with Lincoln Riley, that's never going to be an issue.
Yeah.
So that's where
that is true.
He's extremely intriguing.
Just to add on top of this, Bludman, who, again, while he's been right, and I'm not taking anything away from him, I would take it a grain of salt, but he has been right on a few things before. He actually just tweeted that, the obvious here, whole world is waiting on Lane, but Penn State has a lot going on. Serious interest in DeBoer. Iron Bowl result matters plenty, which I think if Alabama loses tonight somehow, DeBoer will be the next Penn State head coach, in my opinion.
I don't even think that's somehow. It's Jordan Hare at night. I know I said it here yesterday. For those of you who are watching this who are more Big Ten people, I know, Dylan, you can relate to this because you have family down that way. Jordan Hare is to the SEC what Kinnick Stadium is to the Big Ten.
Right.
There are things that shouldn't happen at Jordan Hare Stadium.
And it's all like this.
Actually, the Iron Bowl.
We can debate this in the DeBoer Lane discussion. And to be honest, I know Penn State played a game today against Rutgers, but
we'll get there eventually.
My passing comment is just more like it's the season finale. It's also the least important thing going on right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Really for the long term of this program, the fact they beat Rutgers means absolutely nothing.
It's like everybody at every Penn State fan is basically like, "Ooh, great! Let's get a head coach now."
Yes.
But Blevin then said Chesney reportedly has a Sunday deadline for UCLA job, which kind of goes into the whole thing that we expect Penn State to hire a coach. We're sitting here Saturday just before 8:00. We expect this the next 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours. So that is something to remember there. The DeBoer smoke has been there for a while. It's been a big conversation for a couple of weeks now that, DeBoer may not necessarily be comfortable at Alabama. Even when it was going well for them this season, he was still only one loss away from the Heat being back on. If they lose tonight, there's no way he's returning to Tuscaloosa next season.
No.
So
you think though, even if he wins,
if he wins, that's the tough part because Marty Smith on ESPN did say that if Ole Miss makes the playoffs, Lane. Too many Ellen names going on. Lane wants to coach Ole Miss in the playoffs if they make the playoffs. So I mean,
well, he doesn't want to. He can't take a job and coach Ole Miss.
This is
that can't happen.
You're Ole Miss. You've had like 5-10 win seasons in program history, and Lane's coached 4 of them.
He should. That's why he should stay.
I mean, this is where everything gets hard and interesting. Like, I will say this: if Alabama wins tonight, I don't expect the head coaching hire to be DeBoer. If Alabama wins tonight,
wins.
I think the USC thing becomes a little, and Lincoln Riley becomes a little bit more interesting. Do
you think there'll be a preference at Penn State?
It's absolutely DeBoer.
They favor DeBoer.
DeBoer has been easily one of the top 2-3 dogs in this race from the very start.
I was going to say, I think from the second James Franklin was fired and they didn't get an immediate no from DeBoer's camp, he was immediately top 2 along with Mike Elko.
Mike Elko, DeBoer.
Mike Elko was number 1. Make no doubt about it.
Yeah, Elko, DeBoer, and Freeman were the 3 guys that they were going to go back to basically every week until the search was done or they blocked their number.
And Elko, it ended with the extension, but
yeah,
I think if Pat Kraft had his choice, he would take DeBoer between the 2. But man, you can't. And I saw some people talking about this on message boards earlier tonight, like nitpicking Lincoln Riley. I'm like, and part of it is because of the coach you fired, right? James Franklin is, in my opinion, still at worst a top 15 coach in the country. If you're going to move on from that, and the end result is Lincoln Riley, you can't complain.
No. What a consolation prize.
There's not a single program in the country who, if they fired their coach, would be upset if they could then turn around and hire Lincoln Riley.
And here's another thing, just going back to DeBoer, that is worth noting. You look around nationally, and it's not like it was on game day today, but you look around nationally the last few days, there's been more personalities, reporters tweeting things about DeBoer and that possibility. It's become a little bit more of an accepted possibility in the last week, I would say, that DeBoer may not end up at or be at Alabama next season.
And one other thing I'll add to that too, and again, this could be nothing. It could be something. Jamarcus Shepard took the Oregon State job, DeBoer's wide receiver coach. By all accounts, if Alex Golesh does not take the Arkansas job, which it looks like he won't, Kane Womack, his defensive coordinator, is going to become the head coach of Arkansas. Sometimes these guys, they'll know. Their head coach will keep them in the loop, obviously. They'll know what's up, and that could be a reason why you're seeing guys bolt off his staff for other jobs.
Yeah. And now compared to – I was just going to one thing add.
Sure.
Like I said before, compared to DeBoer, though, Lane Kiffin stuff has been much more under the radar. And it's just one of those things that, people watching just kind of have to take word for it that, I did cover Penn State for several years, do have some connections that And I'm not the only guy who has connections that has reported this interest. It is out on one of the other message boards as well.
Mm-hmm.
But by the way, is this it though? Is it just? Are we now down to it's going to either be DeBoer or Riley?
I wouldn't say it's 100% one of those two, but
who else is in the running?
Bob Chesney.
Bob Chesney, and depending on who you believe, perhaps Kalani Sitake. I mean,
I've never bought the Sitake stuff. I think
it could be
it's DeBoer, Lincoln, or Chesney at this point.
It could be a smokescreen, but his name has popped up on the interwebs a few times. I don't personally buy it. I just don't think it makes sense as a fit. It would be really.
I also think Sitake's in the perfect place right now.
Great coach, by the way.
Yeah, he's a very good football coach. It's
just not a great fit.
No, in BYU, I mean,
it's a different animal. Yeah.
He's an alum. He's a West Coast guy.
Yeah,
he's a perfect fit for BYU.
So he's just a name that's been out there. It's if you want to believe that as a name or not, but
sure.
Sitting here for next 48 hours, Penn State's going to have a coach. Pete DeMel will probably tweet Penn State's in negotiations with somebody in the next 24 or less. I would say it's going to be one of those 4 coaches, and most likely, gun to my head, who do I think ends up the next coach? Me and Marty have always are on the skeptical side, and I'm not as connected as I was in the past. Still do have some connections. I'd still say probably Chesney is probably the most likely option, just because I think Alabama wins, which would probably take out DeBoer.
Okay.
And the Lincoln stuff, I think, is
you're not buying it.
I think there's legitimacy to it, but I just for some reason don't see it. If it happens, I will be somewhat surprised, even though
I know it doesn't seem like a fit. Lincoln Riley at Penn State.
But you go back to Josh Pate earlier this week, and Adam Brenneman tweeted out at first about the mystery candidate. It's been confirmed by numerous Penn State sources that the mystery candidate exists. Who it is, we do not actually know. It could be Lincoln Riley, but Josh Pate has also been on his podcast saying he's heard about the mystery candidate. The mystery candidate would be, for wrestling fans, equivalent to Sting coming down from the rafters in WCW. Wouldn't be necessarily somebody he thinks is a good fit within the program, and wouldn't necessarily be somebody you would guess in the top 15 guesses to be the next Penn State head coach. Lincoln Riley would fit all 3 of those criteria, in my opinion, because you wouldn't guess him to be the next Penn State head coach because he has this massive deal at USC. It's USC. Who would leave USC for Penn State, right? It would definitely be Sting coming down from the rafters type big. I mean, any wrestling fan knows that moment. That was a huge shocking moment. So he would fit that criteria. And then I think you could, have a very good argument that Lincoln Riley would be a weird fit for Penn State in terms of personality. Would his offense work in the North? I mean, those type of conversations. Would he work in the Northeast and Pennsylvania in general? Can he recruit to Penn State? I think he can, by the way, but I think you can debate his fit within the program as a whole. And if somebody said, I don't think it's a good fit, I think they'd have a fair argument. Fit the criteria.
Is there a debate on which of these programs we're talking about have a big leg up in portal cash?
It would be
or not definitive enough for a coach to say, I want to go here over there with the programs we're talking about.
I think USC is in a much. I mean, we see with the recruiting class, they're in a much better spot.
Here's my thing, Dylan. We've come to find out in the last 6-7 weeks that Pat Kraft and James Franklin were so vehemently different on the portal. And
that is true.
That's the thing. The way Penn State was spending with the portal with recruiting was what James wanted to do. And I honestly think that's the main reason James was fired, was because he and Pat Kraft didn't see eye to eye on roster spending and money allotment So, well, I get what you're saying. I'm not convinced that if Pat Kraft didn't get someone in here who saw more eye to eye with how Kraft is with the portal and with recruiting spending, we wouldn't see a change.
That's very fair, and I agree. But based off what we've seen in the past, at least, it could be close. It could be close. I still think USC would probably have a little bit of an edge just because of location and all that type of jazz. But I think the way I think about it, if you're DeBoer leaving Alabama to go to Penn State, it's because you just were not a fit for Tuscaloosa. You don't like being the guy after the guy in Tuscaloosa, which I think is very fair. And it was just not a good fit culturally. Now, if Alabama goes on to win a national championship this year under DeBoer, nobody's going to care about that, including DeBoer. He's a great fit at Alabama. Everybody loves him. The rest is history. But, if he loses tonight, everybody in Alabama hates him, and he leaves for Penn State.
And one thing I'll throw in there too. You mentioned being the guy. You never want to be the guy who replaces the guy. When the guy you're replacing is literally the greatest coach in the history of college football, and he still has an office.
Exactly. You don't want to be the guy to be like. You don't want to be Bill O'Brien replacing Joe Paterno.
Yeah.
But Nick Saban is literally the GOAT.
The greatest coach in the history of the sport, and he still has an office next door to yours. Like
he's breathing down your throat.
That can't be easy to do. And that's
he had to know what he was getting involved with, but he knew what he was. I mean,
sometimes until you get into the scenario, you don't realize what it's really going to be. And again, this is not a knock for me on DeBoer. I think DeBoer is a top 5 head coach in the entire country. I think if you're Penn State and you can somehow lure Kalen DeBoer away from Alabama, you are doing backflips and somersaults and cracking every beer and pouring every shot and having every celebration you can freaking imagine, because that's a grand slam of a hire.
Now, so there's a lot of people in Pennsylvania tonight that'll be rooting hard for Auburn.
Yes.
I have seen more Penn State fans on social media today rooting for Auburn than I've seen Penn State fans rooting for Penn State.
And I think
there's a fair share of this fan base that had they lost today and this season was just over and let's flush it and move on, they would have been perfectly content.
Sure.
But every single one of them want Auburn to win because they realize if Auburn wins, like Dylan's been saying, there's a real chance Kalen DeBoer is the coach in the next 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, I would certainly.
Chesney's just waiting. Chesney's basically just waiting.
Chesney is the backup option. He knows that. Penn State knows that.
Yeah.
Okay. UCLA knows that.
Right.
Everybody knows that. Now, going off what I said about DeBoer, why he would go from Alabama to Penn State. Now, if you're Riley, why would he go from USC to Penn State? I mean, it's USC, and I love State College. I love Pennsylvania, but if I'm a rich college football coach, I think I'd much rather live in Southern California than the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, for lack of a better word. I don't know how is Lincoln Riley married with kids? I think so. I don't know how his family would feel about moving to Central.
Well, like you said, if part of because the only reason this is even a possibility is because there's some issues with the regime there.
Yeah. It's a tough.
The one thing I will throw in there, though, dealing with Lincoln, obviously not to get political or anything of that means by any sort, but Lincoln Riley grew up in a town in East Texas of less than 5,000 people.
Yeah,
what is more similar to some small freaking town in East Texas? State College or Los Angeles, right?
No, that's an absolutely fair point. And
I know even as me, like bias as a Penn State person aside, I would much rather raise my family in a place college than I would LA, just because it's just a much more laid back lifestyle. And and this coming from someone who lives State College, like it's where I live is not that much different than State College. Like it's
I 100% agree. I'm not saying that's why
it's everybody's preference.
I'm not saying that's why he wouldn't leave. I'm saying a lot of people are going to be like, why would you? That's going to be one of the things people list is like, why do you want to live in State College when you can live in LA? Which I've been to LA 2 or 3 times now, and I absolutely love LA.
Yeah, I have no issues against LA.
I wouldn't want to live there.
I wouldn't want to live there, but I enjoy it.
I wouldn't want to live there if I was poor.
Yeah, that's the good point. Yes, that's a big difference. Yes.
Okay, I don't even want to say poor because if you're
even middle class,
exactly. If you're not super rich, even if you're making $1 million, you're still middle class for LA.
Making $1 million in LA is like the rest of the world making like 60,000.
Right. So unless I'm a super rich person who I can buy a house, on the Pacific Coast Highway, have a nice view of the ocean, or up in the hills and be away from everybody, I wouldn't want to live there. But definitely a beautiful place. I love visiting. But yeah, the administration at USC, is supposedly tough to work with at times. And the other points, we've heard in the past, LinkedIn, not being exactly happy with USC's positioning within the Big Ten, always having to travel far to the East Coast, all that. Penn State's still going to have to travel to the West Coast now and then, but most of Penn State's games are within a 3-hour plane ride.
You're probably only traveling to the West Coast max once a year, not USC, who has to travel to the Midwest or the East Coast, 3 or 4 times a year.
And I think you could make an argument based off where James Franklin left this program. Yes, you have to rebuild partial this roster. Now, if you're Lincoln Riley and you make that jump, you're going to be able to do so. You're Lincoln Riley. But I think you can argue that Penn State as a program is in a much better position right now to be successful in the college football playoffs than USC is, even though USC has had a pretty good season, could go 9-3 if they win tonight.
One other thing I'll throw in there for Lincoln Riley, if you compare the 20, and here's my thing with Lincoln. I'm saying this knowing if things go south next year from USC, he could be in the hot seat. If you compare the 2026 schedules, Penn State much. You could argue the hardest game on Penn State's schedule next year is hosting USC. USC has to go to Penn State, go to Indiana. They play Ohio State. They play Oregon. They play Washington. They play Notre Dame. They've got to go to Wisconsin, which is never easy. Their schedule next year is a road grader. Penn State's outside of USC and Michigan, which are split ones at home, ones on the road. Their schedule is very friendly next year.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Like, I don't know if it happens if Chesney gets the nod, but if it is a DeBoer or Lincoln Riley hire,
you're expecting that team to make the playoff next year. But
I think it would be fair. It would be fair to have that belief that they can make the
playoff burst,
assuming that the roster gets rebuilt or you can retain the pieces you need to. And I think.
Does either coach bring some sort of a quarterback with him, or because again, DeBoer doesn't.
I was going to say, to me, that's where Lincoln's so intriguing. Like, look what he's done with quarterbacks: Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Caleb Williams, Jaden Maiev has had a much better season than he probably ever should have with what he has.
He has 3 Heisman winners in his career.
Yeah, he's got 3 Heisman winners and a Heisman runner-up at quarterback. Like. Lincoln Riley, I know people will say, so-and-so is a quarterback whisperer. Lincoln Riley truly is. Yeah. And again, like I said, to open the show, if you're Penn State, the last 25 years, that has been the biggest problem with this program, is you've had so many years where you have an elite defense and a great line and awesome running backs, and you just couldn't figure it out a quarterback.
And even when you got the quarterback,
And
even when you got the quarterback, you couldn't develop him into his full potential.
You found a way to screw it up anyway.
That being said, I expect whoever gets the job is going to – now, if it is DeBoer or a Lincoln Riley, they're going to bring their own quarterback, of course, I think.
Who would DeBoer bring?
Well, who is the kid at Bama as a true freshman?
Well, it's interesting
Washington.
Because I think Austin Mack could follow Shepard to Oregon State, depending on what happens with DeBoer. But that being said, Ethan Grunkemeyer,
Grunk's looked really good.
Has been really good the last 2-3 weeks.
Like Lincoln Riley working with Ethan Grunkemeyer is something that would get me very excited as a Penn State fan. Even Kevin DeBoer and Nick Sheridan, that duo working with him would get me really excited.
So I think it's really interesting it could be very intriguing to see what happens there because I think they could bring their own quarterbacks and you wouldn't blame them, but and I'm sure they will. But Ethan Grunkemeyer has a chance to. Ethan Grunkemeyer will be a starting quarterback at the Power 5 level next season. Power 4 level next season. It's just a matter of where.
And I do want you to circle back to the conversation real quick. Sorry, Greg. Just Why would these guys leave a job to come to Penn State? Ethan Grunkemeyer is part of it. What he has shown since he's taken over, even the Iowa game where his stat line was ugly. If Trevor Pena does not drop a ball in the end zone that Grunkemeyer puts right on the numbers, they win that game. And even some of the mistakes he made, he was not afraid to cut it loose. He was not afraid to throw into coverage, give his receivers a chance. As a coach, you look at Ethan Grunkemeyer and you're like, man, there's a lot there to work with. Like, I think that's part of what makes this job intriguing is having Ethan Grunkemeyer already here.
And I don't think it would cost as much as it would if you had to go bring a veteran quarterback who already is established.
No, because I mean, I've mentioned this before since the coaching change. Like, yeah, you can understand, hey, these kids, they want to go play for James or wherever, but that doesn't take account the fact that these kids have been on campus for a year, 2 years, 3 years. They've made friendships. They might have a girlfriend at Penn State. Families maybe have moved. Like, you've made all these other relationships at Penn State, right? You still, it goes back like recruiting. You'd always rather a kid commit and you have to fight to keep that commitment than a kid never commit. Because once they're there, they start making these relationships in their own personal lives that have nothing to do with football that are going to make it more difficult for them to leave. And I think that definitely, would apply to Ethan Grunkemeyer here.
Yeah, I'm just going to guess that Drew Mestemaker is probably going to go to Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I would assume he'll follow Morris. Yeah,
because they got the money. So
Oklahoma, I know it's Penn State, Bob, but I think Oklahoma State has a chance to be something under Morris. I mean, that is a fan base and a group of boosters who are hungry.
Yeah, they'll spend. I know now, he's no longer with us, but they still have Boone Pickens money. And Eric.
And now that they have a coach who will spend that money
from Stillwater,
now that they have a coach who will spend that money,
yes,
the Sooners, the Cowboys could be dangerous going forward.
And it's the Big 12. It's not hard to run the Big 12.
No, that's not.
No.
I'm going to let you guys go. Appreciate the talk.
Absolutely.
So again, it's looking like DeBoer wins the game tonight. He's out. And then it's between, is Kiffin is really news or is that smoke? And if it's smoke, then Chesney is more than likely going to get the job. But if Alabama loses, DeBoer is going to go to Penn State.
All bets are off if Alabama loses.
I again, not 100% certainty that if they lose.
He's not staying at Alabama if he loses.
I think if Alabama loses the Iron Bowl tonight, and we're sitting here, it's 8:11 Eastern time. We're halfway through the first quarter, and the game's nothing.
If Alabama loses,
if he loses. It could be a wild 48 hours.
If Alabama loses, we'll get back on and do a live stream until he.
It's gonna be this is gonna be up there with that 2021 cycle. Even if Alabama doesn't lose, this may still be up there with the 2021.
And that's a good point because Texas winning last night really
may have saved Sarkisian.
That really that shaked up the playoff race, and a lot can now change because of that Texas win. They could still make it a 9-3.
Unfortunately, the only team, I guess, there's only one spot open if Alabama loses. If Alabama wins, there's no spots open. Everybody won.
Well, I will now. Here's where I disagree: is if SMU or Virginia lose tonight and Miami emerges from this mess as the ACC champion.
Oh, you mean if they get into the ACC championship game?
That opens up that spot. I think if Miami gets into the ACC championship game, they're going to win it.
Yeah, but if Alabama wins, there's no spots open.
See, no, I think if Alabama wins, them and Miami are both getting in as at-larges. What I'm saying is if Miami wins the ACC still, that opens up one more at-large spot.
Yeah. Well, how would Miami get in?
If SMU or Virginia lose,
for the ACC deal, that's yeah.
But I think Miami's in as an at-large. I really do. I think they're going to get in as an at-large. But if they win the ACC, that opens up an at-large spot, which probably Vanderbilt. Which I not to go off here, but I feel bad for Vanderbilt of all schools. They're going to be the 10-2 SEC school that somehow gets left out of this, which sucks for them. But yeah, it's.
Well, you see all these teams here, Georgia, Texas Tech, Oregon, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Alabama wins. And then you have group of 5 and ACC.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. If Miami's a team that wins the ACC, I think that shakes it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, if Miami wins but that they're already in the
Oh, I get what you're saying now. Never mind.
Yeah. BYU is still there.
I think BYU has to win the Big 12 to get in. They're not going to get
absolutely, 100%. No doubt about it. Yeah, Miami can't get in unless Alabama loses.
Yeah. Now, if Alabama loses, then that really spices it up.
Then it would be between Miami and Vanderbilt and Utah, and you think Miami would get in?
Yeah, I think Miami gets in. But I'm saying if Alabama loses and Miami gets to the ACC championship game, then it really gets fun because that's going to open up multiple spots potentially.
Just going back to Lincoln Riley, just to add two more things there to kind of make it, make sure that we're not crazy. Josh paid earlier this cycle as if the cycle actually began yet, but earlier this month or late last month, when he was on, I think it was Bussin' with the Boys. They asked him
it was Bussin' with the Boys, yeah.
They asked him some question and about a prediction or whatever, or a name to watch, and he made a grenade action and said Lincoln Riley would be a name to watch this cycle. So that was kind of the first sign that Lincoln Riley may not be at USC beyond this season, that his agent is looking elsewhere perhaps. So
where else could he go?
Lincoln, well, that's the thing. If it's not Penn State, he's probably sticking at USC because all the major jobs at this point are
especially after his people reached out to Florida, and which to me on Florida's end, that's stupid. Like I would take Lincoln Riley over John Summerall in a heartbeat.
True.
Well, what happens if DeBoer goes to Penn State? Could Lincoln Riley go to USC, go to Alabama?
If DeBoer goes to Penn State and Lane Kiffin hasn't made an announcement yet, Kiffin is
I'm sure.
Here's
the real question. Yeah. Lane Kiffin may, there'll be a tweet probably the next, we're at 8:15 here, and
it could be on before we're done with Lane.
Well, there'll be a Lane tweet probably in the next 12 hours saying Lane Kiffin's in discussions with LSU to be the next head coach. But the real question is, when does that deal become finalized and signed? Because if they could be in talks, but perhaps Kiffin slow plays it and sees what happens with Alabama, depending on what happens. And I mean, that's the whole cycle revolves around Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, it really does. This entire coaching cycle, which, like I said, this might be the craziest coaching cycle since 2021. It all hinges on that Lane Kiffin domino, and
which again goes back to this could be a absolute masterclass.
Jimmy Sexton's going to be smiling regardless. But again, I truly think if Kalen DeBoer leaves, rather it's because Kalen DeBoer goes to Penn State or Lincoln Riley goes to Penn State, so Kalen DeBoer goes to USC. If Lane can get Alabama, that's going to be the job he wants. That's what it's going to come down to. But yeah, it's going to be a wild next 24 to 48 hours or so. And one thing I will say as we wrap up the coach talk here, I mean, we're 45 minutes in we'll eventually talk about the game, I promise. But the one thing I will say is if you're a Penn State fan and Penn State hasn't made a hire yet and you see that Bob Chesney's going to UCLA, as weird as it may sound, that's a positive. That's not that Penn State swung and missed on Chesney. That's that Penn State told Chesney, hey, we're going in a different direction. If they're going in a different direction, it's because it's DeBoer, it's Lincoln. They landed one of what they viewed as a big fish.
Could be stocky.
And if Riley were to leave USC, who could go to USC? Because that'd be a huge job.
That's the thing, and that's where this cycle could get wild. Because I'm still not convinced that Jed Fish doesn't wind up at Florida, which then opens up Washington. And then all of a sudden, 2 of the 3 best jobs west of the Rockies are potentially open.
And that's where it comes all back down to Lane Kiffin, because Lane Kiffin, if he leaves Ole Miss, Summerall, if I'm Summerall, I would want Ole Miss over Florida right now.
100%. I might take Auburn over Florida.
Right.
They're a mess.
Again, so that's where it comes back to. It all comes back to Lane Kiffin and whether or not what he does. Yeah. Because what he does is going to affect what Summerall does. And Yeah, and what happens? Who does Florida go if Summerall doesn't come to games? So I mean, this is where things get really, really interesting.
Yeah, again, it's.
But I agree on the Chesney thing. Chesney gets, if there's tweets about Chesney and UCLA in the next 12 to 24 hours, that's a positive for Penn State.
Very big positive for Penn State.
All right, guys, I'm going to let you talk about that exciting Penn State-Rutgers game. And, of course, typical Rutgers fashion, the way they lost. So that's just life as a Rutgers fan. I was thinking
about you during the game, Greg. I thought for sure Rutgers, this was finally going to be the year Rutgers got over the Penn State hump. And
the problem is Kalakamannis, as good as he's been, he's just not a winner. You saw it. He's not a winner. But I do like –
that fumble, he just dropped the ball.
It's ridiculous.
Just dropped the ball.
Absolutely ridiculous. But I do like the quarterback who's going to start for them next year. He's going to be better than Kalakamannis. I don't know if he'll be better than him next year, but he's got a bigger upside, and he's going to be a good one. So I'm excited about that.
Is who we thought he was.
He is
pretty much.
He is exactly who you thought he was.
He proved that in the fourth quarter.
He did.
All right, guys.
Defense couldn't get out of their own way. If
I know. The only thing that could. Yeah, exactly. All right, guys. I'll be watching. Have a great show, and we'll be talking again for sure when we find out some definitive news on the Penn State coaching job in the next few days. So
probably the next few days. So
yeah. Looking forward to that.
This was enjoyable.
Yes. See you guys.
Good conversation.
All right. So, yeah, once again, Whiteout Report post-game show. 46 minutes, 20 seconds in. We'll start to actually talk about the game. I'm Marty Leap. Dylan Callahan-Crawley here with me as always. Thank you for being with us here with our friends at Proline TV. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, get those notifications turned on, because if you sat with us for the last almost hour, Penn State within the next day or two is probably going to have a coach. We'll be here to talk about it. Make sure you're there for that live show. Give us your super chats, your super likes. Get in the comments, all that good stuff. But yeah, Penn State 40-36 victors over Rutgers. First and foremost, tip of the cap to Terry Smith, the staff, the players. When they had lost 6 in a row and they fell to 3-6, they looked like they were dead in the water. To their credit, they fought back. They're going to finish the regular season not having a losing record. And this was a game against Rutgers that, quite honestly, as the second half progressed, I thought they were going to lose because the offense started to sputter some and the defense couldn't get a stop to save their lives. But the defense, to their credit, when they needed to, the last 2 possessions came up big. The fumble we discussed with Greg there, Ethan Kellick-Manis, I mean, he had denied Dennis Sutton in his face, but just drops the ball. And Amari Campbell scoops and scores to give Penn State a 40-36 lead that they would not relinquish. And then on the following Rutgers possession, they get a stop on 4th down with a tackle for loss by Zion Tracy. And then Penn State runs out the clock and picks up a 40-36 victory. The Nittany Lions 6-6 on the season, 3-6 in the Big Ten to finish the regular season. Obviously, not what anyone wants when you start the year as almost a preseason number 1 team. But again, I think there's credit to be given to this coaching staff, to these players, to fight back, get the 6-6, get the bowl eligibility. And another day for the record books. Nicholas Singleton with 2 rushing touchdowns to break Saquon Barkley's school record for both rushing touchdowns and total touchdowns. He also broke the school record for all-purpose yards for his career. Katron Allen, after breaking this career rushing record last weekend against Nebraska, averaged 10.3 yards per carry, which is impressive in its own, but especially on 22 carries, runs for 226, gets to 4,000 yards for his career. Awesome day from these running backs. And what was most likely, even if they go to a bowl game, most likely the swan song for Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. So awesome to see both of them finish on a high note. And the Nittany Lions pull out a victory over Rutgers to get to 6-6 on the year, 3-6 in the Big Ten. And if you're a Rutgers fan and you're sitting there thinking, man, if we couldn't beat this Penn State team with every opportunity they gave us to beat them, are we ever actually going to beat Penn State?
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it. Penn State just has Rutgers' number, and it's always going to be that way, it seems. No, you said it all well. Terry Smith, great job by him tonight. Great job by Terry Smith over the last few weeks to get this team.
He was not good in game tonight, coach.
Yeah, tonight was not good.
Tonight was a clinic as to why Terry Smith was never going to be the permanent head coach.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And I made the theory in a group chat that he lacked that energy he's had the last few nights, the last few weeks tonight. And I wonder if Pat Kraft told him beforehand that he wasn't going to be the next head coach. But now credit to him for turning around this season for Penn State. Getting this team bowl eligible is quite the achievement. Not many teams lose 6 straight games and win 3 straight to end the season to get to bowl eligibility. So good on him. Good on Penn State. And at the same time, credit needs to go to Nicky for the performance the last 2 weeks. Even against Indiana, I thought the offense had some pretty good moments. But the last 3 weeks, the offense has been playing some really good football. He's been calling some really strong plays in the process. So, I mean, Nicky deserves a lot of credit. The defense, man, I don't know what to say about that. That was a clinic of being terrible. Incompetent. I don't know if Jim Knowles is safe going forward with the next coaching staff. I really don't. We talked about it, especially if it's Lincoln Riley, you would have to think that DeAnthony Lynn could perhaps make a return to State College. Perhaps he's the next USC job if the USC head coach if it's Lincoln Riley.
It could be.
Just that was a poor performance from the defense. But at the end of the day, if you're Penn State, the only thing you care about is that you got a W, you got one more game to play with your brothers, and that will happen sometime next month. Not in the game that we all thought it would be to start the season. Sounds like it could be the Pinstripe Bowl against Pitt. We'll have to wait and see. But end of the day, Penn State gets the win, which is all that matters for Penn State. But also, Nicholas Singleton gets his record this week. He broke a couple records this week. So Penn State did what they had to do in that respect as well. And Penn State fans certainly did not enjoy it throughout the game. But,
no, it was not an enjoyable victory.
But that was a good fun game to end what has been otherwise a disappointing season in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, again, go back to the offense. Andy Nicky definitely deserves some credit. I mean, as a unit, they ran for exactly 300 yards tonight, averaged 9.1 yards per carry. Ethan Grunkemeyer was sacked once. You take away that sack, they averaged 9.8 yards per carry. They just ran it down Rutgers' throat. But they were able to throw the ball as well. I mean, Grunk, 17 of 21, 209 and a score. And really, those numbers could have been better because there was in the third quarter, a third down bubble screen to Trevor Pena where it was a bad throw by Grunk, put the ball behind him, puts it out in front of him. Pena catches it in stride and gets a first down, keeps the drive alive. And there was also a deep ball to Devontae Ross in the fourth quarter where he had him and he just misplaced the ball. He puts the ball in front of him. It's a 70-yard touchdown. So those numbers from Grunkemeyer could have been even better. I thought Andrew Rappelier, tremendous tonight. 4 catches, 75 yards and a score. Had a 53-yard touchdown catch on Penn State's opening drive, and they went for it on a 4th down. Had the catch to convert the 4th down in the final minute to ice the game.
Yeah.
I said this to you and Clay in our group chat. I really hope Rappelier is a guy they can keep around for next year, regardless who that coach is. So I think Andrew Rappelier is going to be a hell of a tight end. But yeah, the offense was humming tonight. You've got to give credit to Andy Nicky. It's been a rough season for Nicky. There are very few coaches in the country who've probably seen their stock plummet more this year than Andy Nicky. But he's finished the season strong these last couple of weeks, tonight included, and credit to him in the offense. And the offensive line was good to see. I mean, I know I've said here before, as a former offensive lineman myself, I love that good physical, we're going to kick your ass to the line of scrimmage and maul you kind of play. And tonight, that's what Nick Dawkins and Anthony Donka and Nolan Rucci and Drew Shelton and the whole crew did. Vega Ione, and a lot of those guys probably in their last game at Penn State. I mean, Shelton, Rucci, and Dawkins are out of eligibility. Ione has probably played himself into it worse, being a top 50 pick in the spring, so I expect him to be gone as well. So a nice swan song for those guys if they choose not to play in the bowl game. But yeah, just really good to see the offense as a whole finish strong after what has been such a miserable season for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a little visitor here who barged in, yeah, it was.
Who's Bryson's bet for being the next head coach?
Who's going to be the next head coach, Bryson? Huh? He says it's wait and see.
He's tight-lipped. He knows better than to spill the beans.
This is a good time to. Oh, well, we got quite a few comments here already. Somebody asked, "Where's our money at who the next coach is?" Assuming they came in a little late here, which is perfectly fine. That's a great question, Baba Booey. In our conversation, I think Marty, who would you say is? If you want to take it, who would your money be on?
Part of this is just me being being just skeptical to all of it. I still think I'd lean Chesney, but man, there's just been so much DeBoer and or Lincoln Riley.
The safe bet is Chesney.
It is. Chesney's a safe bet, but again,
that's just because we can't, even though it's happened before, we just can't picture coaches leaving major programs like USC and Alabama for other jobs.
Especially with the Alabama aspect where, if you win tonight, you've got an SEC championship game in the playoff coming up, But again, I will say, and I mentioned it earlier, but I'll mention it again in case our good friend Baba Booey wasn't here with us. If you see before Penn State hires a coach that Bob Chesney is going to UCLA, that is a positive for Penn State, not a negative. It doesn't mean they struck out on Chesney. It means they told Chesney, hey, we're going in a different direction. And they're only going in a different direction if they think they landed a big fish. So I will throw that out there with the coaching search.
Now, so I'd say a safe bet is Chesney. But again, if you're a Penn State fan, you want Kalen DeBoer, root for Auburn tonight.
No, more tonight if you're looking for DeBoer.
And then the Lincoln Riley stuff again. I think there is legitimacy to it. I think there is legitimacy to him potentially not being in LA next year. It's just hard to say if that's going to be at Penn State. And I think that's because that's just, and again, it fits Josh Pate's criteria. This would just be such an out of left field, last week of the search type development that would just, I don't think I've fully wrapped my head around it. But again, I first heard the Lincoln Riley rumor, or not rumors, the smoke of Lincoln Riley about Thursday morning around 11:30. So I mean, I've known about it for about 48 hours now. I know it's been reported a little bit on the Penn State interwebs earlier today as well. So there is, I think, legitimate smoke there that Penn State has at least probably shown interest. It's just a question of what's the interest level from Riley's perspective at this point. And but Josh Pate did say that Lincoln Riley was going to be a name to watch. There's been reports that his agents talked to Florida about that job. So I think it's safe to say that Riley's representation is definitely looking around this heading into this offseason.
Absolutely. And Baba Booey, to tackle one of the other commenters, says Knowles will be gone, referencing Penn State defensive coordinator Jim Knowles. I still think regardless of who the hire is, Jim Knowles is back next year. Part of it being his contract. He was given a 3-year contract where it was fully guaranteed. So if you're going to have to pay the coach anyway, you're probably going to want him in place. And I still think Jim Knowles is a very good defensive coordinator. I don't think one bad year on a team that, went 6-6 and got their head coach fired doesn't all of a sudden indicate that Jim Knowles can't coach defense anymore either. So,
by the way, it's for the Kalen DeBoer, go for the fans rooting for Auburn. Not going great so far for Auburn. Not going terrible, but not going great. It's 3-0 Alabama. Last 5 minutes of the first quarter, they're on Auburn's side of the field, but Auburn has had no life offensively so far. So.
Well, it would help if Auburn would catch the football and the ball hits the receivers right in the hands. That would be
that is true.
That'd be a big first step for the Tigers there offensively. But
that is true.
Doing their best impersonation of Penn State receivers in recent years. But anyway, to circle back to the game, one thing I did want to mention too, I mentioned Grunkemeyer. 17 of 21. I mentioned the poor throws, a couple on his end, one to Trevor Pena that cost them yards that was caught, and one to Devontae Ross. There was also a wheel route to Nick Singleton, I think, in the second quarter that was just an absolute dime by Grunkemeyer that he dropped in a bucket on the back shoulder that Nick Singleton just out and out dropped. That would have been about a 30 or 40-yard gain, and Nick Singleton be the first person to tell you he should have caught that ball. So, I mean, the stat line on Grunkemeyer, 17 of 21, 209 in the score, looks pretty good to begin with. And honestly, he was better than the stat line. So, again, as we mentioned earlier in the show, Ethan Grunkemeyer will be a starting quarterback for a Power 4 program next year, whether that's Penn State or not, and he's going to be a good one. And I think having Ethan Grunkemeyer here is part of what makes the Penn State job appealing. So now, before we get to the Penn State defense, because that was...
By the way, first game, Penn State's offense has put up 500-plus yards since last year's Big Ten championship against Oregon.
Which is kind of wild. The last time they put up 500-plus yards, they lost the game. But yeah. Before we...
And they almost did again, too.
They did almost did today. I thought Penn State, and you and I have been critical of it at times this year, especially after the UCLA game. But Penn State special teams are really good today.
Yeah.
Ryan Barker, just absolute ice, hit all his extra points, hit both field goals. Mm-hmm. Gabe Nwusu averages 47 yards a punt, gets two of them down inside the 20. But it's also the kick returns. Yeah. Trevor Pena returned one kick for 18 yards, and the reason he returned it is they were squibbing it because Nicholas Singleton averaged 18 and a half yards a return, and his best return of the day that he took to midfield got called back due to it was a hold, but where it was at, it wasn't impacting the play. I didn't think it needed called. And then also, maybe the biggest play of this game was Rutgers runs a fake field goal in the first quarter, and Penn State sniffed it out and stuffed it for a loss. And that proved to be pretty important because if the Scarlet Knights could have gotten those 3 points, it could have been a much different game. If they just kicked the field goal or if they would have converted and kept that drive alive. So, yeah, I thought Penn State special teams, tip of the cap to Justin Lustig, named a semifinalist this week for the Burroughs Award, which goes to the best assistant coach in college football, especially after some hiccups early in the year from Penn State special teams units. Tip of the cap to Lustig and those guys to put together a really strong season and finish with a great special teams performance today.
Yeah, no, he's somebody who I'm sure James is going to try to take him to Virginia Tech, but he's somebody that the next head coach would try to retain for sure. Just some other notable stats offensively. Ethan Grunkemeyer, 17 for 21, 209, 1 touchdown. We talked about it already. He's going to be a Power 4 starting quarterback somewhere next year. Maybe it's Penn State, maybe it's not, but depending on who the coach is, if it's definitely Bob Chesney, definitely somebody that the next head coach would try to retain. Alabama goes up 9-0. By the way, 10-0, going to be 10-0. But 209 a touchdown. The word that comes to mind the last few weeks for me, last 3 games for me with Grunkemeyer is efficiency. Insane efficiency for the last 3 games. I mean, he had one incompletion. Let me find the stats.
Well, I mean, real quickly, look, I'd say today 4 incompletions, and one of them was just a flat-out drop.
8 for 13 against Michigan State, 11 for 12 against Nebraska, 17 for 21 today.
Yeah. And again, take away a real bad drop by Hamilton, he goes 18 of 21 and averages about 15 yards of completion.
Well, we've said it before. He's a more consistent quarterback than Drew.
He is.
And he might be – I don't know if he's a better quarterback right now than Drew, but I don't know if the gap's that big, Marty.
I think the big difference is Drew Aller's always going to have the higher ceiling.
Yeah.
Ethan Grunkemeyer has a much higher floor.
Yeah.
And I'll go back to things we've talked about with Clay. Like Clay has said, yeah, Grunk's never going to make that off balance, off my back foot, sling it across the field on a frozen rope to a receiver throw that Drew will. But Grunk's going to hit the running back who's 5 yards to his right in stride.
Yeah.
And I don't want this to, turn to a negative on Drew Aller, but last year in the Orange Bowl, Penn State.
I do think it's okay to do a post-mortem on Drew and that he didn't turn out to be the guy that we thought he was.
Their opening possession in the Orange Bowl last year on 3rd and goal, he has Nick Singleton wide open for an easy touchdown, puts a throw behind him, and Singleton doesn't catch it. And I remember sitting there with my dad saying, my God, if they lose this game by 3 points or less, that play is going to haunt me forever. And they've lost by 3 points or less. That's a throw Ethan Grunkemeyer makes. He puts it out in front, Singleton catches it, he walks into the end zone, and Penn State goes to the national championship game. But again, not a knock on Drew. I will always love Drew Aller. He did a lot of great things here. He quarterbacked in my opinion, outside of the 2 national championship seasons, last year was the greatest season in program history.
Yeah.
But Grunkemeyer, while he doesn't have the ceiling that Aller does, has a much, much higher floor. And we've seen that because look how many times for Drew Aller, you would see that game where he's like 11 of 24 for 126 in an interception, right? You don't see that from Ethan Grunkemeyer.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think Ethan is he's calm, cool, and collected in the pocket. He's steady Eddie.
He is still a Franklinism. He is steady Eddie.
You know, I don't, and this is a knock on Drew. It just is what it is. But for Drew, it seemed like the moment got to him too many times.
Yes.
I don't see that with Ethan. Maybe early on, but it dependent whether it's at Penn State or elsewhere. I think we may look back at those first 3 games for Ethan being against the 3 defenses that he faced in Iowa, Ohio State, and Indiana, being a huge godsend for him.
Yeah.
And those 3 games may be a reason he turns into a legitimate dude at his school next year.
Especially because I would argue they should have won 2 of those 3 games. They lost to Iowa because Trevor Pena dropped the ball in the end zone that Ethan Grunkemeyer put right on the numbers. And they lost to Indiana because Indiana's 3rd-string receiver decided to go Randy Moss on the sideline. And then you had, I forget the guy's name, the number 2 behind Surratt, make maybe the catch of the year in college football in the back of the end zone. They didn't lose to Indiana because of Ethan Grunkemeyer. He didn't play well against Iowa, but in the 4th quarter, he made the plays that needed to be made, and his team let him down.
Absolutely. So really good by him. Rushing attack tonight, 33 carries, 300 yards, 9.1 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns. Nick Singleton, the all-time touchdown leader, both for rushing touchdowns and from scrimmage. He's also, I believe, the Penn State all-time scrimmage yards leader after today as well. Yeah. Katron Allen goes out in a major way.
Touchdowns and scrimmage yards. So, hell of a career for Nicholas Singleton.
Katron goes out in a major way, 22 for 226 and a touchdown. So he finishes his senior year. Let's see. He will finish with a career best 1,300 yards this year and 15 touchdowns. That's a very impressive season out of Katron Allen. But 300 yards, just the 3rd time since 2020 that Penn State has ran for 300 yards. So that's, again, a testament to this team coming together at the end of the season. When they could have rolled over and died after their 6-game losing streak, they didn't. They played their best football the last 3 weeks. They got to bowl eligibility.
Yeah, and one thing I'll ask you. Maybe you saw it on the broadcast. They had this on the broadcast, and I never in a million years would have guessed it. But Nicholas Singleton becomes just the 2nd player since the year 2000 in the Big Ten to have 4 seasons of at least 10 total touchdowns. You know who the other one was?
So you saw the answer. I didn't.
I did. This guy never would have crossed my mind.
Is it a small school? Not small school, but is it a non-powerhouse school?
It is.
Oh man.
He was.
Well, so what's the stat?
Since the year 2000, Nicholas Singleton is one of 2 players who have 4 seasons in the Big Ten of 10 total touchdowns or more.
More recent or older?
Older. He his senior year of high school, or his senior of college, excuse me. I was a senior in high school, so you'd have been a wee little lad.
Yeah, I didn't get this one.
It was Corey Sheets from Purdue. Because my first thought, and Jake Butt said the same thing, went to Braylon Edwards, because Edwards had a massive freshman season in Michigan, but Edwards went pro after 3 years. And a lot of guys go pro after 3 years. But yes, Nick Singleton joins former Purdue running back Corey Sheets is the only Big Ten player since the year 2000 to have 4 seasons of 10 total touchdowns or more. So tip of the cap to Nicholas Singleton for a, his senior year didn't go as he had hoped by any means, but a tremendous career at Penn State.
I'm going to be honest, I've never heard of Corey Sheets in my life.
I knew Corey Sheets, but again, as someone who, I was in high school when he was at Purdue, so I remember watching him a lot. And most of his damage professionally was done in the CFL. I don't think he ever played it down in the NFL.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not a big Saskatchewan Roughriders fan.
Yeah, not that I know much about the Saskatchewan Roughriders either, but I remember those were the early days of the Big Ten Network, so he was hyped up on there quite a bit. But yeah, a tremendous finish of the season for Allen and Singleton, especially if neither of them play in the bowl game. A great way to cap off their Penn State careers. But before we get ready to wrap it up, we will touch somewhat on this defense.
Marty Campbell had a good day.
First off, it's ironic that in a game where, both teams went over 500 yards of total offense, the game-winning score was a defensive touchdown on a scoop and score by Amari Campbell, who, again, Amari Campbell, I've said it all year, I'll say it again, tip of the cap to him. This year has not gone the way he wanted when he transferred to Penn State. You've never once at any point been able to question his effort, his desire. 14 tackles today, the touchdown, a tackle for a loss, half a sack. I'm just going to say it. I thought Denied Dennis Sutton looked like someone who did not give one single shit today and was just going through the motions, which again ties back to what you mentioned earlier. Some of the talk that maybe the team found out today that Terry Smith is not going to get the job. But there were a lot of guys on this defense. Denied Dennis Sutton, A.J. Harris, Zakee Wheatley to an extent, which is the first time all year I've seen a poor effort from him. Davian Collins, I think, fell into this. A lot of guys look like they were just going through the motions, and that's why Rutgers put up 533 yards and 36 points. But, again, I thought Amari Campbell was tremendous. Dom DeLuca missed some tackles, didn't make the plays to be made. But, again, he's a guy you can never question his effort, question his motor. I thought Yvonne Kemajo had a tremendous game at defensive end, same with Xavier Gilliam at DT. Both freshmen, true freshmen for Kemajo, redshirt for Gilliam, showing why they're guys that the new coach and that Pat Kraft really need to make an effort to retain. But, yeah, overall, it was just a miserable day for Penn State's defense.
Yeah, that's the best way to put it. I mean, this is if your Penn State's defense, most of these guys are never going to watch this tape. So you can forget about it. Again, all you care about is that you got the win. But, yeah, they looked like a team just going through the motions today. And it was an embarrassing effort defensively.
It was. And part of it was, I know you and Clay and I talked about this.
A lot of young guys who played, by the way, and a lot of guys who didn't play much throughout the year played today. I mean,
yeah, I noticed that too. I mean,
Owen Wayfield got in there.
Yes, that was one that jumped out to me immediately. I saw 34 on defense, and my first thought was, why is Tyler Holsworth playing linebacker? And then I realized, oh, no, that's Owen Wayfield. But I thought defensively, and again, we discussed this with Clay. If the defense hadn't played so well the last 2 weeks, it would have been different. For them to play the way they did and to come out against a Rutgers team that, we talked about it yesterday in the preview show. They're not a bad offense by any means, but they're not some world beaters. And to just routinely get gashed by them was, demoralizing. But again, they rose up. I will give them credit. The last 2 possessions when they needed to make plays, they did. They got the scoop and score. They got a stop and 4th down, and they let the offense run out the clock. So when they needed to make plays, they did. But yeah, all in all, it was an embarrassing effort from the defense today.
Yeah, there's no doubts about that. And like we said, I thought a couple weeks ago Jim Knowles was going to come back as Penn State's DC next year, but at this point, I'm not so sure. And I'd lean towards him not. But, if you're Penn State, you don't have to pay James Franklin a ton of money anymore, so you'll take
it makes it easier to give Jim Knowles his money and make him go away if that's what it takes, which would be unfortunate. But again, at this point, and I mentioned this also in our group chat with Clay, I'm kind of the point of this coaching staff, outside of like Ty Howell, who I think is probably going to be James Franklin's offensive coordinator at Virginia Tech, and Terry Smith, obviously, and Anthony Poindexter, who I think is probably going to be James's defense coordinator. The rest of these guys can go, man. Just start fresh, start over. It's what the program needs. It needs the reset button needs hit, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree, and it's going to be interesting. We're still waiting an hour and 15 minutes into this on Lane Kiffin to make his decision. I'm starting to doubt it comes tonight, but I wouldn't be surprised if we hear something shortly after the Alabama game ends.
I agree, because I also wonder how much of this waiting out to see if Ole Miss is going to be in the SEC championship game or not.
Yes.
But we'll get ready to wrap it up here in the next minute or two. Again, Penn State 40-36 victors over Rutgers, finished the regular season 6-6 overall, 3-6 in the Big Ten. To their credit, after dropping 6 consecutive games, they get to bowl eligibility. I did see on the Big Ten Network today, something like 6% of teams who've ever started 3-6 managed to still get the bowl eligibility. So credit to them. We'll see what's next. We don't know if they're going to accept the bowl berth. We don't know what's going to happen with the coaching staff. Alabama does not look like they're going to lose the Iron Bowl, so that probably takes the bore out of it. We've seen the Lincoln Riley smoke we discussed ad nauseum earlier. Bob Chesney still in play. Probably within the next 2 to 3 days, Penn State has a new coach, whether it be Bob Chesney, Lincoln Riley, Kalen DeBoer, whoever it may be. But we'll have you covered here. Like I said, make sure you follow the channel, you like our videos. Make sure you subscribe, notifications turned on, because whenever Penn State does make a hire here in the next few days, and Dylan and I come on to break it down, you're going to be here for it. But yeah, I think most importantly, Dylan, you'll agree. Thank you, everybody, for it's our first year here at the Whiteout Report podcast, our friends at Proline TV. Not the season anybody in Penn State circles wanted or expected, to go from, nearly being the preseason number 1 team in the country to having to survive against Rutgers the last game of the year to get the bowl eligibility. James Franklin, who, for the better part of my adult life has been the head coach of Penn State, is no longer the head coach of Penn State. It's been a truly unbelievable few months. We thank all of you guys for riding that out with us here along the way. But yeah, we'll be back at some point in the next few days to talk about Penn State's new coach, talk about a bowl destination if and when we know it. And again, for Dylan, for Greg, for everybody, thank you very much for riding this season with us and what was expected to be one of the best seasons in program history, one of the most exciting seasons in program history, turned to one of the longest, most miserable seasons in program history. But on to bigger and better things in 2026 and beyond. Thank you, everybody.